Okay? Everybody here? Okay, good morning.
Morning.
It's a pleasure to be here. I want to thank Spencer for inviting me. And just to give you a sense of the accomplishment today, I've organized conferences. I organized one. I won't ever do it again because I don't have the detail-oriented stamina to go from beginning to end. And it really does take an extraordinary amount of that. My wife can do it. I can't. It takes an extraordinary amount of stamina to put something like this together. So make sure at some point in the day you go up to Spencer and say thank you for organizing this. I've been asked to talk. I did a little presentation about this in March, and Spencer said, "Can you talk about why you think atheism matters?" And I use atheism as a catch-all phrase, so you can just read in atheism, freethinker, agnostic, humanist, skeptic, somewhere along. It's just easier to say it that way, yes? So why does atheism matter? Well, I think it probably matters for as many different reasons as there are people here today. Because why something matters to us depends on where we come from. Did we come from a religious home? Did we come from a very religious home? Did we come from a non-religious home? All of these things are going to make atheism, skepticism, agnosticism, yes, matter for very different reasons. So I thought about why does atheism matter? These are just some reasons that I came up with. First, atheism matters because atheists really aren't saying anything very new. One of the things that people sort of shouted a little bit at the so-called new atheists for, Dawkins et al., is, well, you're not saying anything new. And they said, well, no, these problems with religion have been around for a very long time. Atheism presents another side of the human story, an alternate narrative that is all too rarely heard and all too often silenced. Atheism matters because atheists force us to think in terms that do not accept religionist claims a priori. It forces burdens of proof. It forces the onus of proof back where it should be. That is, I don't have to prove to you why your invisible friends don't exist. You have to prove to me why they do. Yes? Atheism reveals the fantasy that religion and its votaries are victims in the various culture wars and social conflicts, social debates, simply because somebody is challenging their beliefs. I get that people are offended, and you know what? You have every right to be offended, but that's all you get. Atheists challenge the value of belief in belief. My mother, when I started sort of this journey of coming out, and I feel like I'm a bit at a meeting. I feel like I should be going, "Hi, I'm Doug, I'm a recovering godaholic." But my mom was very concerned that I believe in something as opposed to nothing. And I said, well, I believe in a lot of things, just not the invisible friends anymore. Atheism provides reality maintenance to non-believers of all types. Yes? And by offering questions rather than certainties, and such certainties as it offers on the basis of empirical evidence, rather than faith in non-empirical entities, atheism reorganizes the question of what's at stake. Because there's a lot at stake. Now, I know this is the first conference Spencer wants. He wanted me to do stuff that would be fairly non-controversial. So I decided that I would kind of loop back to three things that I think are important. The three non-controversial topics that I propose to talk about for a few minutes with your indulgence. Now, I have some of my students here from my atheism class. They're getting marks for being here. So I'll give a shout out to them. But here's the thing. Let's talk about sex. Two of the other books that I'm writing actually have to do with the social construction of pornography. So, yeah. Here's the thing about religion. If I know one thing about religion above everything else, religion is a system of social control. One of the problems with systems that one of the reasons that religion has been so successful as a system of social control is we forget where it comes from. We forget that it's a system. We forget that we built it. We forget that it evolved, yes? Yet when you think about the ways in which religion around the world, and choose your religion, I really don't care, has controlled one of the most basic elements of human behavior, how we reproduce. Religion has told us who we can fall in love with and who we can't. Religion has told us who we can have sex with and who we can't, and when and where and why. Religion has said to 55% of us, your reproductive systems are not under your own control. We will tell you what to do with them. Why? Because our invisible friends have told us. This is Lauren Winner. Aside from a fetish for cat's eye glasses, she is an Episcopal priest. She is a biographer, an autobiographer, a diarist. She is also an assistant professor of Christian theology at one of the most prominent universities in the United States, at Duke University. She also wrote this book. I don't know if you can see it very well, but the title is Real Sex, The Naked Truth About Chastity. And I will read to you. In the Christian grammar, we have no right to sex. The place where the church confers that privilege on you is the wedding. Weddings grant us license to have sex with one person. In the New Testament, sex beyond the boundaries of marriage, the boundaries of communally granted sanction of sex, is simply off limits. To have sex outside those bounds is to commit an offense against the body. Abstinence before marriage, fidelity within marriage, any other kind of sex is embodied apostasy. So much for sex. Politics. Now, I want to think about politics not in terms of elections, but in terms of people. Because after all, politics don't do anything, yes? People do things. In answer to a person who was presenting, these words were spoken. It's dangerous to the progression of this state, and it's dangerous for our children to even know that your philosophy exists. You have no right to be here. We believe in something, you believe in destroying what this state was built upon. Who said that? Representative Monique Davis, who has been the Democratic state representative in Chicago since 1988, on the floor of the Illinois state legislature in April 2008. What was she doing? She was challenging the testimony of a man named Rob Sherman, who is an advocate for atheist, agnostic, freethinker, skeptic, yada. Yes? The civil liberties of people who do not conform to religious convention. And he was there testifying, and she spoke these words. By the way, Rob Sherman is also the man who dug into the Bush the First archives. Right? President Bush the First, some of you are too young to remember him. Back when dinosaurs walked the earth, we saddled them and rode them. At one point in his campaign, he was asked about it. Bush the First was asked what he thought of atheists, and he responded that we are one nation under God. Atheists are not really citizens. He denied that after, but Rob Sherman was the man who dug it up. Well, let's think about this. In Canada, this is from the last census, in Canada, that big white chunk of the pie, that's you. Maybe not all of you. In fact, I know for certain not all of you. But at least probably a good portion of you. So let's think about what this means, yes? What this means is that's about 24%, or about 8 million people. Let me put that in perspective for you. That is 3 times as many Muslims, Buddhists, Sikhs, Hindus, Jews, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, and probably a few others put together. If you don't think this matters in the context of the politics of our country, you have not been paying attention. Yes? Now, let's look at the US, because it gets even more interesting there. This is Pew data from a couple of years ago. About 3%, give or take, actually identify as atheists. 5% either atheist or agnostic. So these are people who are declaring. What does that mean in numbers? That actually means a little bit more than 15 million people, roughly half the population of Canada. If you add in the nuns, not nuns, nuns, you get about 63 million people, or roughly twice the population of our country. So if you don't think that in terms of the politics of atheism, this doesn't matter, it's dangerous for our children to even know that your philosophy exists. You have no right to be here. I wonder how many of that 15% live in her district. I wonder of the 400 or 480,000 people, the last number that I was able to get, in her district, what we would call her riding, are disenfranchised by someone who is the chair of the House Appropriations Committee for General Services, how we fix the roads, who is the vice chair of the Elementary and Secondary Education Committee, and who was a member of the House Appropriations Committee, which is the house that funds higher education. You don't think this matters? This matters. Finally, religion. Full disclosure, yes. I am now a professor of religious studies and social development studies at Renison University College. For 11 years, I was a United Church of Canada minister. I served pastorates in southern Alberta and Calgary, yes. So I know how the sausage is made. Religion is all around us. Can you imagine what might happen if atheists started going door to door? Just enjoy it for a moment. Can you imagine? I mean, we've all been bothered at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning. I mean, it's annoying, but they're unfailingly polite when you tell them to go away, right? But, so what would happen if atheists actually started to do something like this? Well, as it happens, we actually have some data. We actually know, or we have a sense. You may have seen billboards such as this, Imagine No Religion, billboards put up by organizations like CFI, by the Freedom from Religion organization, Don't Believe in God, You're Not Alone, the South Texas Community of Reason. Well, we actually know how people have responded because we have the data. These are messages that were left for the organizations who put up these signs. You should be where John Lennon is, burning in hell. The Bible is the absolute truth, the only truth I'll ever have, blah, blah, blah. Don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right across the street from this one was put up this. Being a good person doesn't require God, you're not alone. It's my personal favorite. I think it's ridiculous that you need to post a sign in a national area that you're not religious. Christians don't post signs saying you're going to burn in hell. Now, I want to introduce you to one more person. This is John Mark Reynolds. Wrote this book. Maybe you've seen it. It's one of the spate of books that emerged in reaction to what have been various called the new atheists, the four horsemen, Dawkins, Dennett, Harris, and Saint Christopher of blessed memory. He'd enjoy that, people. He wrote this book, Philip E. Johnson and John Mark Reynolds. Now, who is John Mark Reynolds? John Mark Reynolds is not William Tapley, the third angel of the apocalypse, who's on YouTube all the time, talking about how the design of the Denver airport is satanically phallic. If you think I'm making that up, look him up. He's not some wackadoo yelling at his computer. Wackadoo, Nate and I realize that's a technical term today, yes? He's not some wackadoo yelling at his computer about whatever. He is, in fact, a professor of philosophy at Biola University for many, many years. He's now the chief academic officer at Houston Baptist University. So he is the one who controls what is taught at a particular university. And in this book, he writes, and, Spencer talked about anger. And I think anger is okay. I talk about it as righteous anger and moral outrage. Yes?
Yeah.
In this particular book, he's refuting the argument that we all have heard, many of us have heard before, about, well, why would you want to worship a God that is so horrible and does such horrible things throughout the context of the entire Old Testament? Yes? This is what he says. He's actually referring to there's no historical evidence that it actually happened, but the mythical invasion of Canaan, which is actually even worse if it's a myth, because they can't just shunt it aside, it will never happen. Yes, you know what I'm saying? This is what he says. Quote, God ordered total war against some people groups because it was the best of the bad options available in the time and with the people he had. The total war against the Canaanites minimized their pain by ending it quickly. Enslaving the Canaanites and intermarrying with them also certainly would have infected the nation of Israel with bad ideas and would have made their progress harder. God knew Israel could not handle a few groups, and so he had to command total war. Now, I'm going to read just a couple of sentences, those again, and I'm going to actually inflect them rather differently. God ordered genocide against some people groups because it was the best of the bad options available at the time. Genocide against the Canaanites and minimized their pain by ending it quickly. God knew Israel could not handle a few groups, and so he had to command genocide. A couple of questions that I have. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I do have a couple of questions. If genocide is the best of the bad options that you have, then maybe you're not much of a god. If genocide is the best of the bad options that are available to you because you're working with a particular people group, maybe you need a new plan. Yes? So, here's why I think atheism matters. Make of it what you will. Because the world without it is too terrifying to contemplate. Because the stakes are just too high to let religion have the last word. Thank you.